Greetings, warrior. There is someone in your life right now who costs you more than they should. You know exactly who comes to mind. Maybe it is someone at work, the person who takes credit quietly, who undermines without fingerprints, who makes every room slightly harder to breathe in. Maybe it is someone closer than that, a family member whose particular brand of chaos follows you home even after you have left the room. A friend who drains more than they give, who needs more than they appreciate, who leaves you feeling smaller after every interaction rather than larger. Maybe it is someone you cannot avoid, a boss, a colleague, a neighbor, a person whose presence in your life was not chosen and cannot easily be undone. Whoever it is, you already feel the weight of them, not just in the moments of direct contact, but afterward. In the car on the way home, replaying what was said and what should have been said. In the quiet before sleep, when the interaction resurfaces uninvited and your mind runs it again, looking for the response that would have landed differently, that would have made them understand, that would have finally produced the acknowledgement or the apology or the simple basic decency that they seem constitutionally incapable of offering. You spend more of your inner life on this person than they deserve. Far more. And some part of you knows that. Which adds a particular frustration to the whole thing. The awareness that they are living rent-free in the most valuable real estate you own, and you cannot figure out how to evict them. The Stoics would have recognized this immediately, not as a modern inconvenience or a symptom of a particularly difficult era, but as one of the oldest and most persistent challenges of human life. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire populated with difficult people, politicians who schemed, generals who disappointed, advisors who flattered rather than told the truth, citizens who complained regardless of what he did. He did not have the option of removing himself from the situation. He had to govern, he had to engage. He had to make decisions that affected millions of people while surrounded by individuals who tested his patience, his principles, and his philosophical commitments on a daily basis. And he built a framework for it, precise, practical, and tested under conditions that most people will never face. Epictetus taught students who were navigating the full spectrum of human difficulty, masters who were cruel, peers who were dishonest, circumstances that were genuinely unjust. Seneca advised emperors who were unstable, dangerous, and capable of having him killed, and eventually one of them did. These were not philosophers who theorized about difficult people from a comfortable distance. They dealt with them, constantly, under high stakes, and what they learned from that experience is as applicable today as it was 2,000 years ago. 7 laws. Not suggestions, not gentle reminders to be patient and kind. Laws, forged from the hardest material that human experience offers, designed to keep your inner life intact when the people around you seem determined to dismantle it. If you are ready to stop letting difficult people determine the quality of your inner life, claim this in the comments. I protect my peace. Let's begin. Law 1. Their behavior is all about them, always. The first law is the one that, if genuinely absorbed, changes the entire texture of how difficult people affect you. Not partially absorbed, genuinely, deeply, practically absorbed. Because most people agree with it intellectually and still do not live by it. They nod when they hear it, and then spend the next 3 days processing why the difficult person did what they did, as though the answer is located somewhere in themselves. It is not. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his meditations about the people who frustrated and opposed him with a consistency that is remarkable, given the power he had to simply remove them from his life. He did not, and the reason he did not, and the reason he could remain functional and philosophical in their presence, was rooted in one foundational understanding: that every person acts from their own interior world, their own fears, their own wounds, their own unexamined assumptions about how life works, and that their behavior toward you is a reflection of that interior world, not a verdict on yours. Think about the difficult person in your life right now, the one who criticizes without warrant, who creates conflict without obvious cause, who withholds, manipulates, dismisses, or destabilizes. Ask yourself honestly, is this behavior consistent? Does it show up not just with you, but with others? Does it have a pattern that predates your relationship with them? Almost always the answer is yes, because the behavior is not a response to you specifically. It is a habit, a coping mechanism, a way of moving through the world that was developed long before you arrived and that will continue long after any particular interaction with you is over. This is not an excuse for the behavior. The Stoics were not naive about the reality of difficult people or the genuine harm they can cause. But understanding the source of the behavior is not the same as excusing it. It is the specific move that prevents you from internalizing it, from carrying it home, from letting it inform your sense of your own worth. Their behavior tells you something true and important about them. It tells you almost nothing about you. If this is the reframe you needed, drop this below. Their behavior is theirs, not mine. Law 2. You cannot change them. Stop trying. The second law is the one that costs most people the most energy, because the attempt to change difficult people is so deeply habitual, so emotionally logical, and so consistently unsuccessful that it has become one of the great invisible drains on human well-being. You explain. They do not hear. You set a boundary. They push past it. You respond with patience, and they interpret it as permission. You respond with firmness, and they escalate. You try a different approach, and then another, driven by the reasonable belief that if you could just find the right words, the right tone, the right moment, something would finally shift. It will not. Not because people cannot change, they can, but because people only change when they decide to, from the inside, under their own motivation, at a time that has nothing to do with when you need them to. Epictetus was unambiguous about this in the Enchiridion. He placed other people's choices, opinions, and behavior firmly in the category of things not in our power, and he meant it without exception. Not mostly not in your power, except when you say exactly the right thing, not in your power. The energy you are spending trying to change, convince, fix, or reach the difficult person in your life is energy being poured into a category that cannot receive it. It goes nowhere. It produces nothing, and it costs you something you cannot get back. This does not mean disengagement from all relationships or the abandonment of honest communication. It means releasing the specific goal of changing the other person as the measure of success in the interaction. You can communicate clearly, you can set expectations, you can express what you need and what you will not tolerate. All of that is within your power. What happens after, whether they hear it, whether they respond to it, whether it produces any change in how they behave, that is theirs, entirely and always theirs. The moment you genuinely release the project of changing them, something shifts. The interaction stops being a referendum on whether your efforts were good enough. It becomes simply what it is, an exchange between two people, one of whom you can influence and one of whom you cannot. And knowing which is the beginning of something that actually resembles peace. Write this one in the comments. I release the need to change others. Law 3. Respond from values, not from reaction. The third law addresses the specific moment when the difficult person does the thing, says the cutting remark, takes the passive-aggressive jab, creates the situation that is designed, consciously or not, to produce a particular response from you. Because difficult people, whatever else they may be, are often remarkably skilled at triggering the people around them. They know through long experience exactly which buttons to push. And when those buttons are pushed, the response that arrives, the defensive snap, the retaliatory comment, the emotional escalation, is not yours in any meaningful sense. It is theirs. They produced it. You simply delivered it. Marcus Aurelius wrote about the space between stimulus and response as the territory where a person's character actually lives. not in the stimulus that arrives from outside and cannot always be controlled, not in the automatic reaction that is conditioned, reflexive, and requires no thought whatsoever. In the space, the conscious, deliberate, values-driven space between what happened and what you choose to do about it. That space is where you are either the author of your own behavior or simply the latest actor in someone else's script. The practical application requires something that feels, in the heated moment, almost impossible, but becomes more available with practice. When the difficult person does the thing, pause. Not a dramatic pause, not a pause that signals you are pausing. Just the internal beat of a breath in which you ask one question. What would the person I am committed to being do right now? Not, what do I feel like doing? What would the person I am building do? That question changes the quality of everything that follows, because it shifts the source of your response from your emotional state, which the difficult person has just intentionally or unintentionally disrupted, to your values, which are yours, and which no one can disrupt without your permission. This is not suppression. The feeling is real and it deserves acknowledgement, but the feeling does not have to become the behavior. That distinction, practiced consistently, is one of the most powerful things a person can develop, not just in dealing with difficult people, in every domain of life that matters. Stamp this below if you are choosing to respond from your values. I choose my response every time. There is a version of strength that looks like winning the argument. That version is not strength, it is performance. Real strength in the Stoic framework is not demonstrated by having the last word or the cleverest comeback or the most devastating reply. It is demonstrated by the quality of your inner state when the difficult person has done their worst and you are still standing exactly where your values put you, unrattled, unchanged, completely yourself. That is not a small thing, that is the thing. The Stoics were not interested in defeating difficult people. They were interested in not being diminished by them. Those are very different goals, and only one of them is actually within your power. Law 4. Protect your energy without apology. The fourth law addresses something that the culture of connection and availability has made almost taboo. The right to protect your own energy from people who consistently deplete it. Not as a hostile act, not as a rejection of relationship or community, as a basic recognition that your attention, your emotional bandwidth, and your inner peace are finite resources that require conscious stewardship, and that giving them freely and without discrimination to everyone who demands them is not generosity, it is self-abandonment. Seneca wrote about this with an urgency that runs through his letters like a warning. He was deeply concerned, in a way that feels prophetic from the distance of 2,000 years, about the way that indiscriminate availability erodes the quality of a person's inner life. He wrote about guarding your time and your attention as you would guard something irreplaceable, because they are irreplaceable. Every hour spent in the company of someone who drains without replenishing, who takes without giving, who leaves you consistently worse than they found you, that hour is gone. It does not come back. And the accumulated cost of years of that kind of availability is a person who has less and less of themselves left to give to the things and the people that actually matter. Protecting your energy does not require drama. It does not require confrontation or explanation, or the kind of formal boundary setting that becomes its own exhausting project. It requires clarity about what you can genuinely afford to give, and the quiet, consistent practice of giving that and no more. It means leaving the conversation when it has served its purpose, rather than staying until you are depleted. It means reducing contact with people who consistently leave you diminished, not with resentment, but with the same practical neutrality you would apply to any other situation that was costing more than it was worth. The Stoics were not unkind about this. They did not advocate for coldness or indifference to the struggles of others. They advocated for wisdom, the recognition that you cannot give from an empty vessel, that protecting your energy is not selfishness. It is the precondition for being genuinely useful to anyone. If this permission is what you needed, leave this below. I guard my energy without guilt. Law 5. See difficult people as teachers. The fifth law is the one that the Stoics found most useful and that most people find most difficult, because it requires a reframe so complete that it initially feels like denial. The law is this: every difficult person in your life is, whether they intend to be or not, one of your most valuable teachers. Not because their behavior is acceptable, not because what they are doing is right or fair or deserved, but because the specific friction they create reveals, with a precision that comfort never could, exactly where your own inner work remains unfinished. Marcus Aurelius returned to this idea with the consistency of a man who had tested it under genuine pressure and found it reliable. He wrote about the people who frustrated him not as obstacles to his equanimity, but as tests of it, and therefore as the specific training ground on which that equanimity was developed. A philosopher who is only calm in calm circumstances has not developed equanimity. They have simply not been tested yet. The difficult person tests you, and the test reveals something true about the current state of your inner life that no amount of quiet reflection could surface as efficiently. Think about what the difficult person in your life actually triggers in you. The specific feeling, the particular flavor of frustration or hurt or anger or anxiety that their behavior produces. Now ask honestly whether that feeling is entirely about them, or whether some part of it is touching something in you that was already tender. A need for approval that runs deeper than you would like. A fear of conflict that makes you smaller in the presence of aggression. A wound around being dismissed or overlooked or undervalued that was there long before this person arrived. The difficult person did not create those things. They are simply pressing on them. And knowing where you are tender is essential information for anyone who intends to do genuine inner work. This does not make the difficult person's behavior acceptable. It makes it useful. And in the Stoic framework, the ability to extract usefulness from difficulty, to find the lesson in the friction rather than simply enduring the friction, is one of the highest expressions of philosophical practice. Say this out loud, then write it below. Every difficult person teaches me something. Law 6. Know when distance is wisdom. The sixth law introduces a necessary counterbalance to everything that has come before it, because there is a version of Stoic endurance that crosses the line from philosophy into self-punishment. The line is this: the Stoics taught equanimity in the face of difficulty, not the obligation to remain indefinitely in situations that cause genuine harm. There is a point at which continued engagement with a difficult person is not philosophical practice. It is simply the tolerance of something that should not be tolerated. Cato the Younger understood this. He was a man of extraordinary principle who engaged fully with the most difficult people and the most corrupt circumstances of his era, and who also, when the situation finally demanded it, walked away. Not from weakness, not from an inability to handle difficulty, from the clear-eyed recognition that some situations cannot be improved by presence and are only made worse by continued engagement. That the appropriate response to certain people and certain circumstances is not better management, it is less contact. The Stoics did not view withdrawal as defeat. They viewed it as one of the tools available to a wise person, to be used when the honest assessment of a situation reveals that continued engagement serves no one and costs the person doing the engaging their peace, their values, or their sense of self. Reducing contact with someone who consistently harms you is not the abandonment of your Stoic practice. It is an expression of it. The practice asks you to be clear about what is within your control. Choosing who has access to you is within your control. Using that choice wisely is not weakness. It is the most practical form of self-respect. The question to ask is not whether the difficult person deserves your absence. It is whether your presence in this situation is producing anything of value for you, for them, or for anyone else. If the honest answer is no, then distance is not abandonment. It is wisdom with clean hands. If this distinction matters to you, claim this below. Distance is sometimes the wisest choice. Law 7. Return to yourself after every difficult encounter. The seventh and final law is the one that most approaches to dealing with difficult people leave out entirely, and it may be the most practically important one on this list, because the difficult interaction does not end when you leave the room. It continues inside you. In the replay, the analysis, the residue of feeling that the encounter left behind, and if that residue is not consciously addressed, if it is simply carried forward into the next hour and the next conversation and the next task, it accumulates. It colors things that have nothing to do with the difficult person. It spreads outward from the original encounter and affects the quality of everything it touches. The Stoics practiced what might be called the evening review, a deliberate daily examination of how the day had gone, what had been handled well, and where the philosophical practice had faltered. Marcus Aurelius used it. Seneca described it in detail in his letters. The purpose was not self-criticism, it was recalibration, the opportunity to assess, with honesty and without drama, what the day's encounters had produced in the inner life, and to consciously return to the values and the equanimity that those encounters may have disturbed. After a difficult encounter, this practice becomes particularly important. Not immediately. Give yourself the space to feel what you feel without rushing to philosophy. But when you are ready, sit with the encounter honestly. What happened? What it triggered in you? Whether your response reflected the person you are committed to being? What, if anything, you would do differently? And then, this is the critical part, let it go. Not as a performance of letting go, genuinely. By recognizing that the encounter is over, that continued processing of it is not resolution but repetition, and that your inner life is too valuable to remain a storage facility for other people's difficult behavior. You deserve to return to yourself after every storm, fully, without carrying the weather of someone else's interior world into the rest of your day. That return is not automatic, it is a practice. And like every practice worth having, it gets easier and more available every time you choose it. This one's yours. Claim it below. I return to myself. Always. Warrior, here is the truth you carry forward. Difficult people are not going away. This is not pessimism. It is the honest acknowledgement that human life has always included, and will always include, people whose behavior tests your patience, challenges your principles, and creates friction that you did not ask for and did not deserve. Marcus Aurelius knew this. He wrote about it at the very beginning of his meditations, reminding himself before the day had even started that he would encounter difficult people and that this was not a surprise or a special grievance, but simply the condition of being alive among other human beings. What changes is not the presence of difficult people. What changes is your relationship with them. The degree to which they are able to reach inside your inner life and rearrange it without your permission. The amount of your finite mental and emotional energy that goes toward processing, replaying, and reacting to behavior that was never really about you. The size of the gap between who you are when they are not around and who you become when they are. 7 laws. Their behavior is about them. You cannot change them. Respond from values, not reaction. Protect your energy without apology. See them as teachers. Know when distance is wisdom. Return to yourself after every encounter. These are not 7 steps toward a life without difficult people. They are 7 practices for a life in which difficult people no longer determine the quality of your inner world. That inner world is yours. It was always yours. And no one, regardless of how persistent, how skilled at provocation, or how permanently present in your life they may be, can enter it without your permission, withdraw that permission consistently, without drama, without resentment, simply as the quiet, daily expression of a person who has decided that their peace is worth protecting. Make it real. Comment this: "My inner world is mine alone." If you want more content like this, ideas that cut through the noise and give you something real to work with, subscribe and turn on notifications. We are building something here together, one video at a time. Thank you for being here. There is more ahead. Stay with us.